Hey everyone, my name is Sholtu. Welcome to my channel. So today I will be coming with part 2 of my video titled Where Are Jamaican People From?
It says, but false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will also be false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves.
A lot of people were commenting on part 1 of this video saying that Jamaicans and those who are of the Caribbean diaspora and the African diaspora, pretty much anyone whose ancestors went through the transatlantic slave trade, we are descendants of the original Israelites that came from the land that is now called Israel, and we are the descendants of those, particularly in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, as well as the US. We are the direct descendants of those of the tribe of Benjamin and Judah, which are from the 10 lost tribes of Israel. A lot of people had also commented saying that we are Shemitic Hebrew Israelites and our ancestors were actually immigrants to Africa. So how exactly did our ancestors, the ancient Israelites, end up in Africa? And why did the transatlantic slave trade happen? Why were our ancestors sold into slavery?
Right? It's all based on a lie. The lie being that the United States was built solely on the backs of black slaves who were solely owned and tortured by whites. Allow me to introduce the other side that you never learned in U.S. history class. For it was not only blacks who suffered greatly under the awful tradition of slavery. There were white slaves, and there were lots of them. I've been studying this hidden truth in depth. I've looked through the work of suppressed historians and documents through multiple books that I purchased. Many of them. Okay. Here's a quote from one of the authors of this book that I bought called White Cargo.
Voyager's website, we can see an estimate of over 12 million slaves from Africa and an estimate in the inter-American slave trade of over 600,000. Yet they use the word imputed. And what does that mean? It means assigned to something by inference from the value of the products or processes to which it contributes. Estimated. So these are estimates and inferences. When we go to the actual voyages, we notice in the next to last column that some of the ships had no captives. This is a close-up of it. So what was on the ships that travel all the way across the Atlantic? We see the very same thing for the intra-American voyages. No captives on ships that were traveling. They were not carrying slaves, they were carrying commodities. When we get to the data variables, we see that embarkments were only over 8,000 for Africa. Disembarkments at 18,000. This is the intra-American real data variables, and we see 7,000 embarked and about 22,000 disembarked. So what are we witnessing here? What we have here is a time lapse of the ships. Over 20-some thousand ships in the inter-American, and there were over 36,000 from Africa. Yet, when we calculate the data from embarkments, the actual data, what we find out is that the numbers only reach about 16,000 actual data embarkments. And if we count the disembarkments, we get about 40,000 in the slave trade. All of the ships that are listed with no captives that travel across the waters, what do you think they were carrying? Why would you travel from London to Africa all the way across the Atlantic with no captives. This is their data. This is not me making this up. And so what we have here is a very deceptive inference, estimated, imputed system of trying to hide something. And what are they trying to hide? You're looking at it in the time lapse. Indigenous people were taken from South Carolina into Cuba, from the Carolinas and Virginia into Jamaica, from Jamaica back into the States, from Brazil into the North American continent, from the North American continent back into Mexico. In fact, the slave trade started with Americans being taken from America back to Europe and Africa. And so we wrote the book, They Lied About the Slave Trade, so that you could get this information and not have to go by estimates, inferences, or something being imputed to you. They listed the real data on the very same website that they lied on. And this is important because this shows if someone will go through this much effort to lie, to deceive, to veil, through very shrewd methods, what do they want to hide? They want to hide the fact that the population of Black Americans in the Americas was already here. The mound builders, the pyramid civilizations, the She. Not only do we have their commentary of proof when they first came here and who they saw, but we left it in stone. Where else can you go and see locks and dark skin in Bonham-Peck, in Chichen Itza? They lied about the transatlantic slave trade. They lied about a lot. But this impacts your identity.
I was told by spirit and ancestors to clear this up. I'm most likely a descendant of a Moor. And even though the original Native Americans were black, they was always in conflict with each other. Because as we know, the Moor is in Spain and England, that type of area over there. They came to America, trying to get land, materials type shit, and it was in constant war with Americans. So even though we both black, we was damn never friends. So that's why when y'all hear Native Americans had slaves already, it was actually more prisoners of war than any other war that they probably would have had throughout their land type shit. So even though we both black, we was warring and fighting. And this really how the Caucasians were able to sneak in and take the land from us, because we was already fighting ourselves. And this how Africans came to America. We already had boats and shit coming trying to fight with the Native American. So what the Caucasian did is the Caucasian saw these fights and was like, I help you if you do this, and basically backstab both our ass while we've been fighting each other type shit. So no, they didn't take us from Africa. We was already coming here. But so it's a bunch of different type of black people in America. You got the black straight hair Indians and the black Moors.
So in my research, I learned that in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies actually captured Jerusalem. Jerusalem was invaded by the Romans in 70 AD, and the Hebrew people escaped and fled to West Africa to blend in with the African people. So I'm assuming that physically, phenotypically, we looked very similar to the people who were already in Africa, but culturally, religiously, we were different.
Stop it. Get some help.
Moor or Morano was a blanket term for the Israelites, meaning black, who were taken to the areas of Spain, Portugal, Germany, England, and Rome by the Romans in 70 AD as slaves. But when the Roman Empire fell, these Hebrews took control and ruled those areas and remained there until the European powers took back over, like in 1492. This is how you get terms like Anglo-Saxon, which translates as the angelic sons of Isaac, or the German name Kop, which is derived from the Hebrew Yaakov via the Latin Jacobus. The name was changed throughout the major European languages from Jaquez, Giavaco, Giacapo, Iacapo to Kop. Hence names in German like Schwarzkopf. Schwarz is a surname of the German origin meaning black. So names like Schwarzkopf translate as Black Jacob.
So again, a lot of Afro-descendant Jamaican people and Afro-descendant people throughout the Caribbean are of Igbo descent.
Hell no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no, to the no, to the no, no, no. Hell no, no, to the no, no. Hell to the no, no. To the
And other Nigerians actually have tiny synagogues in many cities across the country, which is really cool. I didn't know about this prior to looking into it, and it definitely makes me want to visit these synagogues and learn more about the rich history in that part of Africa. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool to know that there are practicing Jewish communities out there in Nigeria, and I'm sure other countries across Africa.
Book reference. When the so-called whites came into power, they shifted the colors. But as late as the 1500s, the Moors still depicted their gods and heroes so-called black, and their devils and villains so-called white. This is getting good. They paint Christ, the Blessed Virgin, and other saints in black form, and devils and wicked man, white form. Wow. Thus Christ and his apostles are painted black, and Judas painted white. Yeah, I'm taking it there. Book reference. Here's a statue of St. Peter. That statue is in the Vatican. Receipts. This is Pope Gregory I, one of the great African popes of the early church. Receipts. This statue is St. Benedict the Moor of Palermo, Italy. Can you see him? This is the real Council of Nicaea to the left. Look at their complexions. And this is the so-called white European version. The real version, the fake version. All of them was Moors. Now watch this. Revelation chapter 1 verse 14. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. You listening? And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Pause. Now that's a clear description. And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. The color brass and the color black are nowhere near the same. Brass is a copper complexion. This is white, this is black. Bing bong. Is it making sense now? Hair white like wool, as white as snow. Then you got this guy. His hair is not white, nor is it woolly. His skin is not burnt like brass. This is a fraud. Now brace yourself. This is one of the reasons Noble Drew Ali said they live off your virtues, and why some describe them as vampires who suck your royal blood and who cannot come out into the light of the sun or the light of truth. European books that represented the highest Moorish achievements were stamped in a rare inside cover. Do not sell in the United States.
Of the rock comes from Georgia, Russia. The Caucasus Mountains, that's what Caucasian means. The word Caucasian comes from the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, Russia. It's a range of mountains. They were pushed in during the Dark Ages or Middle Ages, when the Israelites, the Moors, ruled Europe. We had forced them up here to these mountains. Give me the next picture. This is the mountain. Y'all can look it up. You can Google it. We're not making nothing up. Okay? And this is what they will not teach you in school, and they will never teach you this in church. Right? These are the original cavemen. This is them. They were the cavemen. You can read about, where's that? Is it Job 33? Is it? Where it says out at Job 30.
said that the Hebrews were enslaved for breaking the rules of Yahweh, which is the Hebrew term for who Christians call Jesus. Many people in the comments said that we, as in the African diaspora, those who whose ancestors endured the transatlantic slave trade, have been and are paying dearly for the sins of our ancestors and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So the book of Deuteronomy tells the history of Israelites from the Old Testament and gives a biblical explanation for the transatlantic slave trade. So particularly Deuteronomy 28:15 to 68 speaks a lot about the history of the Israelites and prophesizes a lot that has come to pass amongst those of African ancestry. So I'll read a few passages out of it. It's quite lengthy. Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people, while your eyes look on and fail with longing for them all day long, but you shall be helpless. A nation that you have not known shall eat up the fruit of your ground and all of your labors, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed continually. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Because you did not serve the Lord your God with joyfulness and gladness of heart, because of the abundance of all things, therefore you shall serve your enemies, whom the Lord will send against you, in hunger and thirst, in nakedness and lacking everything. And he will put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. And the Lord will scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your fathers have known. So yes, that is the passage that a lot of people urge others to read if they want to learn about the history of the Israelites. And that's a lot. Like, based on that passage, God was definitely very angry with the Israelites. I'm happy to share this history with you all and this insight just for you guys to look into and to further question. And I hope this inspires those watching to continue the quest of just learning and unlearning and discovering and just being curious. That's the whole overall point in general, and for me to just stay curious, because I feel like this is a journey of just learning ourselves and discovering our identity, because there's such a desert of our history and knowledge on ourselves. And so I want to do my part in sharing and spreading the history and documenting our place and our impact in this world. So I'm happy to share part 2 of the history of Jamaican people, which also applies across the entire African diaspora.
Look, thank you for your comment, but I'm sorry, you are completely wrong. When we talk about slavery in the context of the modern day transatlantic slave trade, not Viking times, not during St. Patrick's time, but in terms of the modern day transatlantic slave trade, the Irish were not victims. It is clear fact that the form of forced labour that the Irish people endured under British rule was called indentured servitude, not chattel slavery. Indentured servitude was a form of unpaid labour that was bound within the confines of a contract between two parties. Many times it was used as a form of punishment by the British establishment to ship out troublemakers and criminals in Ireland out to the colonial territories. And other times there were Irish people who voluntarily entered into indentured servitude in order to emigrate to other countries or pay off debts and loans. The contract will last about 7 to 10 years, and after that time, the person was free. However, slavery was very different. You were property, chattel, owned by another human being. You were born into that life. This was not the experience of the Irish. What I failed to mention in my last video was that many of the Irish indentured servants who had moved to the Caribbean, like Barbados, like Jamaica, once they finished their time as labourers, became overseers for slave masters or slave owners themselves. There are many famous Irish slave owners who you may not have heard of. There's James Moore, right above my head there. He was the first governor of Carolina in America. He arrived via Barbados, and whilst in Carolina, he he enslaved thousands of indigenous people. There's Dublin-born Joseph Wall, who's educated in Trinity College. He was the governor of a key slaving trading post in Gorey, which is modern-day Senegal, back in 1779. And there was also the Irish Catholic William Ronan, who's known as one of the most successful Atlantic slave traders. Between 1687 and 1697, he worked for the Royal African Company. He was in fact chairman of the Committee of Merchants in Cape Castle, modern-day Ghana. Cape Castle was one of the most notorious slaving ports in the world at that time. And he too enslaved thousands of Africans. So that begs the question, how could Irish slaves exist while there were many successful Irish slave owners, slave overseers and slave traders all around the world? Answer, there couldn't have been, because the Irish were not slaves. The myth that the Irish were slaves is a false narrative that is used to undermine movements like Black Lives Matter and to diminish the suffering and long-term effects that slavery had on the African continent and the African diaspora. There are many Irish people who contributed to the transatlantic slave economy and got very wealthy from it. So don't get it twisted, the Irish played their part too, which I'll probably make a video about soon. Black Irish History, Part 17. Today, I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm not going to focus on a particular person, but I'm going to focus on a country. Now, have you ever heard of the Black Irish of Montserrat? Montserrat is a small island in the Caribbean that's made up of roughly 5,000 people. What a lot of people don't know about Montserrat is that it has deep Irish roots. Irish immigration into Montserrat goes back as far as the 17th century. The Irish were originally sent to Montserrat as indentured servants, exiled by Oliver Cromwell. Known as the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean, Irish people first arrived in Montserrat in 1632, and people of mixed African and Irish descent still live on the island today. Along with this, you can find the remains of Irish culture all over the island. For example, the island's flag and crest portrays a woman with a harp and a cross. Montserrat is the only place outside of Ireland where St. Patrick's Day is a national holiday. And even in some of its music, you can hear the influence of Ireland. Have a listen.
There's a spot in me heart which no carry me. There's a depth in me soul never sounded unknown.
These influences are a large part of Irish heritage in Montserrat's history. And even in speech, there are some people from Montserrat that if you listen to very carefully, you may hear a hint of an Irish accent. Take a listen.
Well, the Irish people came to Montserrat on account of Cromwell, where he was exiled. We heard they had some fighting there and the Irish people came and it was inside.
Montserrat is an island made up of black people with Irish heritage and Irish blood. If anyone ever says that black people can't be Irish or can't have Irish blood, show them this video. Yeah, do that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. There's more facts about the Black Irish of Montserrat that I want to share with you all. But until then, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Slán Lat and Kemesia.
This is Standard 4 in the Infant Jesus preschool in Plymouth, Montserrat. The faces may not be terribly familiar to you, but I think some of the names will. Let's try some of the names. What's your name?
Eugene Fleming.
Eugene Fleming. Is that right?
Eugene Fleming.
Good man, Eugene. And what's yours?
Sean Castle.
Sean Castles. And what's yours?
Jerome Mead.
Jerome Mead. Is that it?
Yeah.
Good man. Now let's try some of the girls. What's your name?
Trouble.
What is it?
John Burke.
Joanne Burke. Is that right? Good girl, Joanne. And what's yours?
Michelle Castle.
Michelle Castles. And what's your name?
Irish.
What's your first name again?
Colleen Irish.
Colleen. Is it? Colleen Irish. Is that your name?
Yeah.
Good girl, Colleen. And what's your name?
Michael Ryan.
Michael Ryan. Well done. And what's your name?
Marianne Carty.
Marianne Carter. Is that it? Good girl, Marianne. And what's your name?
Sandra Farrell.
Sandra Farrell.
Ministry of Education, I have a bone to pick with you. Why are so many Jamaicans ignorant of their own history? Why so much dunce people in my comment section? Oh my God, people, stop it. The Jamaican accent is not an African dialect. The Jamaican accent, like everything associated with modern Jamaican heritage, is in fact the byproduct of the cultural melting pot that our motto embraces. In fact, in terms of cadence, it's most similar to an Irish accent.
I've been shook enough now, to be honest, since the racing. A bit tired now and the legs are like jelly, but yeah, I suppose we did a bit of celebrating and did the podium thing and got to put on the podium pants as well.
You see, as early as 1656, Oliver Cromwell ordered 2,000 Irish children to be taken to Jamaica and sold to English settlers. The extent of Irish immigration to Jamaica was so prolific in the centuries to follow that 25% of Jamaican citizens can claim Irish ancestry. And this includes Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey. So if you never know, now you know. Again, out of many, one people.
How are you, pal? Can I get a pint of Guinness, please? I'm dying for a pint.
Yo, I'm get a hot Guinness. Yeah, just straight out the back. Don't even open it. Me open it myself and me teach. Simple things. Hurry up now.
Please feel free to share them. Let me know what you think about our alleged connection to the